Hello there everyone and welcome to another edition of Lydia's Crafty Corner with me, Lydia, in my little crafty corner. So today we're going to be creating this card which features the fabulous new stencil art from Oldie and also an oldie but a goodie die cutting technique. So this is the stencil set and this is the stencil art playful watercolor flowers. So we are going to stencil this onto a panel first. To start with, there are 3 little dots around the first layer of this, and that is so you just need to kind of line up those later on instead of lining up the flowers themselves, which makes it so easy. So I am going to color this bit in first, and first up I have the pink crystal, and what I've done is I'm adding that to the base layer of the flower. I did decide to kind of cover up the little holes that I've just done with a pencil using a little bit of tape. So that means I'm not going to be able to go through those and add ink onto those little spots, which is good. So I'm going to go again in with the pink crystal and I'm going to add this all over the base of these 2 flowers that we have here. Really quick and easy to do. I'm just using a small blending tool for this, but you could use a larger one if you wanted to, or even a smaller one. Completely up to you what you feel works best for you. Once I've covered the entire shape, I'm then going to go in with a little bit of mauve and I'm just adding that around the kind of little masked off center area of the flower just to add a little definition there. So once that's done, I am going to carefully remove this layer and then I am going to line up those little pencil dots that we've added with the little dots that we have, the etched dots that we have on the stencil. So this time around, I don't need to cover the holes because the holes themselves are not there. There is just some little etched dots. So you're going to line those up with the spots underneath. So this time round, I'm going to go in with the mauve first, and I'm going to add that all over the kind of open shape that we have in this stencil. Again, I'm using a small blending tool to do this. As usual, I am trying to add more of that ink to the base or the center of the flower to give that kind of graduating effect outwards. Once that's been done, I'm going to take a touch of the Berrylicious, and as before we did with the first layer, I'm just going to add that color right at the center portion to add that really deep shadow on this layer here. And I'm going to do that for both of the flowers that we have. So once that's been done, we're then going to remove that stencil again, and then we're going to add in the 3rd layer again, just lining up those tiny little etched dots that we have instead of having to worry about the flower itself. It's so clever, it's so amazing and so easy to do. Once that's been done and lined up perfectly, I'm then going to go in with the Berrylicious, add that all over the open area of that kind of deeper colour that we have, and then to deepen that and to add some more interest, I'm going to go in with the Acai Berry and I'm going to add that right at the centre to add that really dark, beautiful touch to this one here. Once that's done, I'm then going to move that stencil over and I am going to get rid of the little guide dots that we have from before because they are no longer needed. So for the second stencil, this is going to have the etched flowers in. So you're just going to line up the flowers that you've just previously inked up, and then the leaves are going to be in the perfect position. So first up, I'm going to go in with some of the Icy Lemonade. This is a really pretty kind of light greeny lime yellow color. It's very yellow, but also a touch lime. It's very pretty and it is going to add the perfect base to these kind of really bright leaves that we are going to be adding on. So I am using a small blending tool for this one. Again, as before, you could definitely use a larger one to kind of cover the area quicker, or you could use a smaller one if you wanted a little bit more control and maybe kind of picked out different leaves to add in with different colors. So once I've covered the whole base layer with the Icy Lemonade, I'm then going to move on to the Oolong Tea. And I'm just going to use this to add that color to the kind of center of the leaves or the base of the leaves. So the more of the stem area. So the tips have the Icy Lemonade on, but then the base has the Oolong Tea. And that's going to give us that really great gradient effect on there. So once that has been done, I'm going to move on to the next stencil. This is stencil number 3, and I'm going to pop that in place. Again, this is going to line up with the etchings that we've previously kind of inked, and the etching's going to fit around those. I'm then going to move on to the citronella. This is a very, very pretty color, and I am going to add this all over the kind of open areas that we have on here. I definitely could have used a larger blending tool on this, so it didn't take quite so long, but I do like the kind of control I get with the small blending tools. These, I have to say, are my favorite. Shh, don't tell anyone, but these are my favorite go-to ones. But I do like the other ones as well, but these ones are the ones that I would probably grab first. So once that has been done, I'm then going to go in with the green gold. Again, I'm going to be using a blending tool. This time around, I did choose to go for a mini one. So this is just so I have a little bit more control, just adding that color right at the base of these kind of open areas that we have on this stencil. And this green gold is so, so pretty. I am loving this color. Once that's been done, I'm going to remove this stencil, and then we're going to move onto the next one. So the next one has other leaf clusters on it, and it also has the little buds that are going to go at the top of the kind of arrangement that we have here. So for this time round, I'm going to go in with some more greens. Now this is more on the green color. The other ones were more yellowy. These are more greens. And this is the matcha tea. This is such a pretty color. I'm really liking this. So I am going to add all of this ink through all of the open areas on this stencil here. Again, using my ever trusty mini blending tool. Again, whatever tools that you have, use them, grab them out. Let's get ink blending. So I'm just going to go all over and color all of these in. Again, I'm trying to add more of that darker, more saturated color to the base of these leaves to give that kind of natural gradiating effect on these. To kind of add to that, I'm going to add some more darker color to the base, and this time around I'm going to go in with the swamp green. I'm also adding these colors to the flower centers that we have on the open areas of these stencils, but if you wanted to, you could definitely add those flower centers in a different color. You don't have to use the same color as you're using for the leaves. So we're going to remove that stencil and then move on to the 5th stencil that's going to add in the detail parts to these leaves. Sorry about my hair popping in then. And we're then going to go in with the swamp green to add the color all over the kind of detail portions that we have on this stencil. Again, I'm using that same blending tool from before. I'm then going to add some of the darker color just to the base of these, and this is the oak moss color. Very, very pretty. One that I'm sure I'm going to use again and again. Now, to add a really dark background to this, I am going to use an artist marker. The artist marker that I'm using is the Dark Night. So this is a really, really deep blue, which has a very gray undertone to this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the bullet nib to go around the outside of the image that we've just stenciled. And then I'm going to use the other nib to kind of color that in. So for the smaller areas, I did use the bullet nib, but then for the larger areas, when we get to the top portion, I did use the stencil. So I've just added that in with the kind of pink colors that I used before that were just already still on my blending tool. So I do have to say, coloring a background like this does take a little time, but I really, really do think it's worth it. So once I finished my background, I then took 1/4 inch off. So now this is 4 by 5¼ inches. And I'm going to then cut out my sentiment. I'm using the Be Kind die. And I'm going to be using the larger shadow and also the sentiment itself. I'm going to start with the sentiment itself. And this is the oldie but goodie technique of cutting out your sentiment from the kind of overall image that you wanted to use, and then using that again to kind of pop it up. So I find this is a really good technique. It's one that I never use anymore, but I used to use it all the time. So I'm really glad that I kind of used it again this time. So I've cut the sentiment itself from the image that we've just created, and then I'm going to use the shadow just with some white cardstock. So normally with this technique, you would just pop up the sentiment itself and you would get a kind of subtle look of the sentiment peeking through a little bit. But this time I wanted to use that shadow. So we're going to get more of a kind of bolder look to the sentiment rather than just have it kind of shrink into the background a little bit. So to pop the sentiment up, because we've just got rid of all the space that we were going to pop it onto, I'm going to add a little bit of cardstock behind. So I'm just going to use some of the ultra sticky tape from Oldie. I've just added that around the kind of die cut area that we have, and then I'm just going to use some plain cardstock behind it just to kind of cover that area up. So once I've added that piece of cardstock in place, I can then remove any of the excess, and then we have a solid kind of place to start with. Once that's been done, I'm going to add my die cut sentiment, so the really pretty one that has all of the image on top of the one that is just plain white. So it's going to add that white shadow around, or the white kind of border around that pretty sentiment that we have there. So once that's done, we can then add that back into place as well. Before adding this into place, I do have the kind of landlocked areas between the letters that I need to stick back in place. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball this, making sure they're round about the right place. You don't need to get these perfect because we have the kind of shadow or the layer on the sentiment itself. That white background is going to give us a little bit of wiggle room with adding these little pieces back into place. I'm just using the glue tape from Oldie, my ever trusty glue tape. This is my favorite and I tend to grab this often and it does not leave my desk. So I'm just going to pop all of those little pieces in. So remember, when you die cut your sentiment, do not get rid of any of the pieces that fall out from it. You need to make sure you keep those so you can pop them back into place. So once that has been done, we can then add the sentiment into position, and I'm just going to be using a little bit of foam tape just to pop these a little bit up. You could just add this flat if you wanted to, but I did want a little bit of dimension to this. So I've added some little strips of foam tape. I'm just going to remove the backing off those, and then once I have done that, I can then add that back into place just over the die cut area that we have. So there we go, nice and easy to do, and you can see just how pretty that looks. You can see it's kind of subtle, but it's also popped up, so it gives a really great look there. I'm then going to pop the whole panel itself onto a card base, and the card base is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so I'll have a nice white border around the outside. To add a little bit more dimension, I am going to add some of the instant dimension foam tape to the back of the panel before adding that down. Then I decided I needed a little bit more sparkle, a little bit more something. So I'm going in with the satin white sequins from Oldie. I'm just going to add a couple of dots of adhesive around the sentiment. I've gone with 3 little dots in 3 little parts around the sentiment. And I'm going to be using all 3 of the sizes in the sequins. So the larger one, the medium one, and also the smaller one on all of those 3 little dots that we have around the sentiment. Some of these little things can be a little bit tricky. So I do have my little tweezers to help me out positioning those little sequins into place. Once that was done, I then wanted to add a little bit more. So I'm going in with the white spray ink from Oldie. This is a matte spray. It's very opaque, so it's going to give a really beautiful look. And I'm just going to add a couple of different splatters on there to kind of make the whole project look a little bit more artsy and a little bit more finished. Once that's done, that's the card complete. I really do hope that you've enjoyed the video and that you like the card as well. If you do create a card that was inspired by this, it'd be great if you do share, because we'd love to see. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and we'll see you again really, really soon. Bye-bye. Hey there, Lydia here. I really do hope that you've just enjoyed the video. If so, please subscribe to the Oldie YouTube channel. Also, turn on the notification bell so you can get your daily dose of crafty techniques and tutorials just like this. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.